to kick things off, before we get into speaking a little bit about art, I just wanted to ask you, Shabda, because I was reading regarding the law of karma, and I thought this was quite interesting. You elaborated a bit on illusions and mirrors, I guess, at how this works. Is this something you'd care to comment about?
I don't know. The more I try in my own life to see that everything that happens to me is trying to show me the state of my understanding, and the things that I perceive to be negative issues is just a mirror showing me where I'm missing the mark in my thinking, and it's automatic. It's like the universe always mirrors us back to ourselves. And what appears to be problems with, quote, the other person, that is the first mistake that we make, is when we think we're having problems with the other person. The other person is us. And that's the hardest thing. That's the hardest thing.
Yeah.
To see that the other person is us, mirroring us back. That, I don't know. That's one of the big question marks with me, because there are certain people, for instance, that I can't be around on a daily basis because I get pulled down. And I think everybody is like this. You have people that you meet that just suck your energy and make you feel depleted. I think everybody has experienced this. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that even though this is us, this is some dark corner of our psyche mirroring back maybe that this is a possibility that we could be manifesting, and the fact that we want to throw this from our lives is a statement saying, no, I don't want to manifest that part. I don't know. This is
definitely a fact. It's just a factor. It doesn't have to be a conclusion or an absolute. It's just something at play within the way you perceive that.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So, do you think that this is just, a dark side of ourselves that we, just don't want to look at or recognize, or?
Well, the universe supports all possibilities. Obviously.
Yeah.
There is no God coming down and stopping our wars. If it's going to get stopped, we're the ones that are going to have to stop it.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And, also another thing that I wanted to get to today, as we spoke a little about in our mail conversation, was, I had this idea regarding art, and I guess we could apply this to all kinds of art, including music or a simple painting or basically whatever, I guess. But my point here is, I think you could achieve the same goals. We could, as you said earlier, you're reading a lot of David Icke books at the moment, and this obviously, is helping you, I guess, grow and become aware of more stuff and whatnot. But do you guys think that art could be just as important? This is not the question of what music or what art is good for this purpose, because this is obviously an individual thing. But the question is, if we can, do you think that a man can look at a painting, a man or a woman look at a painting, and actually become, I guess, more aware or more enlightened, that something actually clicks inside of that person that helps the person grow?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we do as artists is try to point the way to some of those things. You know, like myself, I often create from like a moment of peak meditation or peak awareness, because that's when I feel moved, when the spirit moves me. I mean, it's part of what I've learned to do is to remain open, and when the spirit moves me, to go with it. So in a sense, you know, if you're an artist who's into the energy in that way, you're always trying to code almost spiritual truth into either an image or into a song or in whatever direction it goes. That's really one of the main reasons you're doing it. Is to infuse it with that taste of the other realms that can be accessible through experiencing the medium.
Yeah, because it feels like, in some sense, the art is very good in that sense that it's not always. I guess when people view it is, you know, people don't have this idea perhaps that the art is trying to, you know, convince them or change them in any way. But on the other hand, if you're, you know, out there trying to awake people with, I guess, information, you can basically pour how much information you want over the person, but they are still close-minded. So in that sense, I get art could open up, I guess, you know, synapses in the brain or whatever that actually, you know, help, you know, to get the person to awake, basically.
Oh, I think that's absolutely right. Art, any kind of artfully doing something, really expresses all the rest of the universe that words can't express.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that also brings up the point that you and I were talking about. You remember how we were talking about the astral realms and how to understand a lot of what David's talking about. You almost have to have other prior awareness of, you know, certain meditative things and certain mystery school types. I mean, that's pretty kind of advanced in a way that you need it to have been exposed. I mean, you could read it, but it means more if you can see for yourself, like the astral landscape, and see how this all doesn't happen just in the physical. You know, but how you said, like, musicians are we were talking about musicians specifically, but it applies for all the other things we're talking about. How they're in the astral realm, they're perceiving astrally, they just don't realize it yet.
Yeah. Or they don't call it by that name. It seems, you know, most musicians don't use occult terminology simply because they just haven't been exposed to it, that's all. It doesn't mean that they're any less in. I mean, everyone's always in the astral realm. You know, I mean, there's no way to be out of it. It's just a matter of whether you want to tune your consciousness and experience that aspect of that part of your consciousness.
Well, yeah, talk about that a little bit. Tune your consciousness. You could go more deeply into that, because that's one thing we were saying, it's not a way, you don't experience it through your five senses, really. It's a different way of feeling or being, or
how would I say, it's a relaxation. Essentially, I would think all of the methods of meditation, at least the methodology part of the meditation, is mainly a crutch to get your consciousness to release and relax away from all thinking, so that there's just a nothingness there. When that happens, then you're out of the matrix. You're out of time. Time doesn't exist in that state. And we all know this. We all knew this on a daily basis as children. And our so-called education and so-called upbringing really shuts all that down.
Yeah.
It's as if, you know, we go through all this filtering that we, under the guise of growing up, and we shut down most of the centers that really are the most joys of life. I mean, all children, no matter how difficult their external circumstances are basically a whole hell of a lot more happy than the adults in the world.
Yeah.
And that's because they're still connected.
Closer to the source, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, and they're very artistic. Everything that they do is artistic.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You know, it's just like art. I can't imagine. I mean, I just have surrounded myself in my life, in my house, in my everyday activities with all kinds of artifacts, and you know, whether they be music or paintings or poetry or books or whatever. I can't imagine being without all of that. Things would be so one-dimensional.
You know what you mentioned earlier also the I Ching. I'm kind of fascinated by this because I recently linked up to an article on my site, from my site, explaining a little bit about the I Ching, but this is still something I having a bit of difficulty to kind of wrap my head around. Have you studied this for long, Shabda, or you, Chris?
Yeah.
Anyone want to comment on that?
I studied it mainly, right along with the tarot when I first got into this. Yeah. What's your question about?
I guess kind of the main idea. If you could elaborate on the main idea, because I guess, do you know if it's like an Eastern version of like the tarot, or is it a completely different aspect?
Well, it's the same process. It's a window into the divine mind, and the hexagrams are basically it mirrors probable human conditions. That's not a very good word. Life scenarios, let's put it that way. And it puts it into 64 images, and then each one of those 64 images has a sub-image, 6 of them. Those are the 6 spaces in the hexagram. And the way the thing works, well, I tell you what's really interesting is the mathematical basis of the I Ching is exactly the same down to the last detail of the mathematics found at the center of the Mayan calendar. And what they have found when you put these mathematics in binary form, now I'm getting way beyond the edge of my understanding of mathematics, but I'm quoting here what I remember from Jose Arguelles' book about the what was it called?
The dream
the
spell?
The harmonic
convergence.
Conversion, yeah.
Or was it concordance? I can't remember.
I can't. Yeah, it was that book.
Yeah, sure.
What he says, he says, my God, I looked at this, and he says, this is exactly the mathematics of human DNA, down to the last detail.
Dang.
So, when we look at the I Ching, we're looking at human DNA translated into Chinese and then translated back into English.
Boy, you almost have to wonder if that's alien technology at that point.
Yeah, it's that the I Ching is really a computer program in book form. It's numbers. It's what it is. So, and the idea is that, in other words, it goes back to what everything is so simple. We make it so complicated. Everything it goes back to the idea that whatever